Oops. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the PRC IAPN Roundtable. And as usual, this is our weekly Saturday night roundtable discussion where we cover all sorts of topics dealing with the pagan community. And as usual, this is headed up by our Reverend Edward Stott. And then also with us today is Reverend Shadow Wolf as well. So let's get rolling. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to do a thing on beliefs and customs of Wicca. Now, these beliefs and customs don't not only apply to Wicca, but sometimes, generally, they're representative of almost all pagan belief systems. So, the first is that there is a divine spirit present in all things and in all creatures, peoples, animals, plants, stones, etc. This stems off the whole idea of stems off originally on animistic practices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. However, unlike in other belief systems, Wicca does not personify the divine creative force. And a lot in paganism, we don't personify divine creative force. We know it exists, but to personify it, to minimalize it, to bring it into man's ego for understanding purposes of understanding, minimize basically puts finite limits on the infinite. We just recognize that there is a divine creative force. Earl and Shadow Wolf, do you agree with that?
Yep, I would definitely agree.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we believe that the ultimate creative force manifests in both feminine and masculine mode. Therefore, is often symbolized as a goddess and a god. Okay. As we know in creation, it takes both a male and a female in order for creation to occur. What we do in Wiccan pagan belief systems is we use pantheistic viewpoints to use pantheons as a archetypal representation of both the male and female forces and how they relate in order for creation to occur. Now, these archetypal principles are actually used in a correlation where we have, like, for example, if I want justice, right, I might choose Apollo and Athena as my god and goddess for that purpose, as that archetypal principle, in order to basically give myself the idea and the correlation of justice that are represented by them, and then turn around and take action appropriately thereof. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
Okay. In some covens and some traditions, both are celebrated equally. In others, the goddess is given precedence or even celebrated without reference to the god. There's only one actual Wiccan tradition that does that, or used to do that, and that's the Dianics.
Well, that's also an all-female branch of Wicca too.
Right. It's also all female. Go ahead.
You know, so of course, but they, you know, celebrate that part of their craft, which is that feminine aspect, versus most other Wiccan traditions and eclectics. You'll see more of a equal representation of both God and goddess, whichever god or goddess they may choose, because there's a lot depending on just exactly what you're following and practicing, whether you're Norse pagan, Celtic pagan. My fiance is Egyptian. Her oh god, I'm drawing a blank here today, guys.
Well, one of the reasons why a lot more of Wiccan pagan spiritualities are goddess oriented over God oriented is
One of those other religions would appreciate people using deities from their pantheon without actually following the rites of those religions.
Roderick, that's an interesting question. However, considering that a lot of the pantheons that are used in today's modern practices of paganism and Wicca, right, the pantheons are long since dead or indeterminable pantheons, ancient history, gods and goddesses, if you will. That the practices are no longer there. The renewal of those particular pantheons are what basically Wicca and paganism has brought back into light. Is a renewal of those pantheons. So there aren't too many cultures that still exist today of the older cultures that we brought the pantheons from.
Closest.
Ooh.
Something for your mic, Drew.
Yeah, and basically, people have come to know me for calling things as I see it. And the one thing that, and I've made comments about this, and that is that it seems like a lot of groups pay more attention to the feminine side of things and leaving out the male side, the gods. They tend to leave it out, and it's like, hang on a second, you can't just have the one side because it's equally based.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I was just mentioning, or just about to mention too, that we were just talking about in regards to the masculine and feminine principle. Many of modern Wiccan traditions and many modern pagan traditions go with both. However, it used to be that because of matriarchal religion, patriarchal religions overtaking the patriarchal god, the male god, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it used to be, well, let's find a religion that's more matriarchal and let's make it more matriarchal in its premise. Wicca initially started off more matriarchal than patriarchal, but now has evolved to where it's recognition of both is predominant.
Yeah, and like I said, granted, I know that the way that paganism and Wicca is referenced is a matriarchal, but you gotta have even grounds, um, because if you're purposely leaving off the male gods and not even making reference to them, it really, to me personally, it signals to me that you're not you don't care about the male side of it things anymore. All you want is just a matriarchal, and it's like, no, that's, I can't accept that.
Yeah, there needs to be duality is necessary because if you look at the if you do look at the aspect of creation, and this is something that's observed in creation. It takes both a male and a female in order for things to be created. So a dual recognition of both is predominant and important. Welcome back to Reverend Shadow Wolf.
Sorry about that. I'm experiencing the same issues I was yesterday during my live stream. My internet's randomly cutting out, so I apologize to everyone if this is a continuous problem.
Okay. The next thing is all goddesses and gods are aspects of the goddess and god. The aspects of the most popular in Wicca are the triple goddess of the moon, maiden, mother, crone, and the horn god of death and rebirth.
Good evening, Patsy. Thanks for tuning in. And thank you, brother. Our Boston Witch brother is tuning in as well.
Okay, Roderick's asking, is there any way of knowing that there are any more Wiccans that are male or female? Second, are there any more male or female deities within the pantheons being utilized? Okay. Back in the 70s, Roderick, especially in Wicca, right? I would say there were more female Wiccans than male Wiccans. In fact, as it was pretty much a female-dominated belief system in the 70s. Up until about 1992 and 93, more of the male witches started coming out of the broom closet, so to speak, and there's pretty much now an equal number of male to female witches or practitioners of Wicca.
I'm not sure about being an even number. I think there's still there's I don't know how to put this.
I don't know if there are more Wiccans that are male or female. Sorry, I'm reading out loud.
No, that's fine. So basically, I'm not sure that there's an even number at it just yet. I know we'll get there, but I don't know if we have an even number right now.
It's not 100% even. I said it's predominantly becoming more even. Secondly, are there more male-female deities within the pantheons being utilized? Actually,
depends on which sect you go with.
It depends on which. Yes, exactly. Depends on which pantheon it's actually being utilized, Roderick.
It would be more of a. Are you practicing with Norse pantheons? Are you practicing with Egyptian pantheons? Are you practicing with Celtic pantheons? So on and so on and so on and so on. Because I mean, if you look at like Roman mythology and Greek mythology with Zeus and then Jupiter and them, it just is whatever you're practicing and stuff. So honestly, there's really no determining factor on there's more male than there are female pantheons, or there's more female than male pantheons. It's a toss up because you've got so many different branches of paganism, so many different pantheons that are male and female. Like to try to break it down, and then there's also paganism branches or things that would be classified as paganism that probably aren't even known to this world, which would be more tribal worship and stuff that deals with tribes and stuff that aren't even public knowledge. So there's no real answer to that question of yes, there's more of this than the other.
Which is more the animistic practices like Santeria, like the Miztec, Aztec, and Mayan shamanic practices. And some of the African Fon, Bon, Benin, African practices, which are more tribal in their nature. So there is a lot of different. There's no set determinants, if you will, on whether there's more more gods and goddesses. However, there's and mostly in Wicca, there's a representation of both a triple god and triple goddess, actually, because you have the ever birth, the born hunter, dying god that you'll see in the male, and you'll have maiden, mother, and crone you'll see in the female goddess. Reincarnation and karma are valid concepts. Upon death, one goes to a state of rest and reflection and eventually chooses where and when he or she will be reborn. Okay, we do believe it. We borrowed from Eastern mysticism in regards to reincarnation. We do believe in reincarnation and karma, which is again Eastern mysticism or Eastern ideas. Okay. Basically, there's a belief in the Summerlands. Okay, a place where the soul soul occupies this mortal vehicle and then turns around and then leaves the mortal vehicle once it's finished learning all it can from this mortal vehicle, goes to the Summerlands, writes in the Akashic record, and then rinse louder and repeat, so to speak. Goes back to a next incarnation to learn all the other aspects. Okay. Of the known elders within the pagan community, are there more male or female elders?
I was just trying to count in my head. I'm like,
the problem with that is, again, it kind of falls into the same branches with the pantheons. There is no quote unquote, this is the person that you go to if this coven's having an issue. Every coven has their elders, every coven has their high priest, high priestess, or high priests and high priestesses, depending on how big the coven is. So, if you're talking about like publicly recognized elders, I couldn't give you a number, but when you talk about elders, like I said, each coven has their own elder or their own group of elders and stuff. Like inside the coven that I belong to, I'm a third degree, I'm an elder inside my coven. So, I mean, it just depends on the coven.
Now, primarily in Wicca traditions, but in other pagan traditions too, magic with a K is practiced for positive helping purposes, spiritual development, healing, guidance, safety, etc. That's a primary moralistic practice that you find in most common. I'm not saying it's 100% because there are many that sit on the gray. One thing that I'm going to say about magic, and this is something I've stressed about magic for years, is magic has no color, no moral value, nothing of that nature. It is basically the physical manifestation and manipulation of energy in accordance with one's will. By definition, that's the pure definition of magic. Now, to prove this in a sense, okay, basically, if in the United States and in our country and in most European countries, it's illegal to walk around without wearing clothes. It's also immoral in human society, correct?
Yep.
Well, it depends on what society you're a part of too. So
now, if we go to Africa and this African tribal community says it's illegal and immoral to wear clothing, whose morality is right? Neither or both. As they say as is well said, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Okay.
So that being the case, right? Magic has no actual say. Yes, we prefer to be moralistic, and most pagans, modern pagans, prefer to be moralistic and decide to do more work towards helping each other, helping the community, helping and healing than they do negative magic. But that is not 100%.
To add on to that, there is no such thing as black magic or white magic or gray magic. It's the intent that the magic is used for that defines its color. And I'm gonna give you an example. Somebody might use something that they would classify as black magic to do harm to somebody, but then I flip around and I use that exact same spell to do something that's good. So here's my question to you then: is me using that same spell for my own intents and purposes, am I practicing black magic or am I just practicing magic in general? It's the intent that I'm using that magic for that defines what goes out. And also part of that a lot of people don't realize is everybody thinks that the threefold law applies and stuff, which it does, but there's also another thing that applies to that. Everything that we send out when we do whatever magic we're doing, whether it's good, bad, in the gray, whatever, defensive, offensive magic, whatever, there's a price that you have to pay for that. There is a karmic price that each witch has to pay when they do their spell work, whether it's a good karmic price or a bad karmic price. Karma will come to collect, whether it's immediate or whether it's future. You're going to pay a price for the magic that you put out there. It's just like anything that you do in life. Every action has a reaction and it has a consequence that comes with it, whether good or bad.
Right. Agreed.
Totally agreed. You're not wrong.
And yeah, it is the intent behind the spell or magic that you're using that determines whether it's uh, bad or good. Because, yeah, I agree with what you were saying here is that um, there is no like dark magic, white magic, gray, however you want to do it. It's the intent.
And the intent is defined not, like I said, the intent is defined by one's own personal moral value as well as one's own societal moral values.
Right.
Well, also what they're trying to do too. Like if you're trying to hex somebody, well,
And
that's
and when you mention the threefold law in that regard, Andrew, or Reverend Shadow Wolf, sorry, when you mention that, one of the things that I know for fact is something I've said about the threefold law. Threefold law is how we're affected by the choices we make in three aspects: physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
absolutely.
At the time that we do that, is how we affect others or ourselves at that very time. It is a dharmic principle, which means it's immediate in effect. It also has future karmic repercussions, but it is immediate in effect.
Right.
And I used to teach a class on the threefold law, which we're not going to go into in this session because it would take some time to do it.
Right.
But
sometime we could do an entire freaking broadcast off of that alone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Trust that we believe in that aspect.
Yeah. So basically, when we're referencing karma, his, I usually will chime in especially when I'm seeing someone who is putting bad intent out there I will reiterate that karma can and will come back to bite you very hard.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
Yeah, because especially when I'm seeing people that are putting out wrong information, immoral information, it's like I'm putting no, I'm nipping this in the bud.
Okay.
And so, and I also want to say good evening to Jennifer Norton for tuning in. Thank you for coming to join us tonight.
Good evening, Melody Hatcher. Nice to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure to meet you. It's good to see more people coming in. We are going to take a quick commercial break,
Oh,
and then we're going to get back to our
it is that time.
discussion.
All right. Whoops. Sorry about that. Wrong one.
I just walked into this coffee shop. You'll never guess what I found. All the help is deeply engrossed in metaphysical times. You should too. I'm at the Egyptian, 475 Park Avenue in Idaho Falls, Idaho. You get your very own copy for free, and we're open till 10.
Sister Moon, Apothecary and More is a collaboration of local island witches bringing you handcrafted tools for ritual, amazing apothecary, custom vinyl work, merchandise, and so much more. But we are not just an online store. We are a sisterhood, a platform, and a voice for everything that is magical. Join us for our famous Tarot Tuesdays from 11 to 4 Eastern Standard Time for a discounted reading with our amazing in-house intuitive reader and priestess, Wolf Spirit Energy, Beverly Oberlin. You can find us on Facebook at Sister Moon Store or on the web at sistermoon.shop. So fly on over and stop in for a spell.
Yeah, so we'd like to thank our sponsor, Metaphysical Times at metaphysicaltimes.com is where you can find the Metaphysical Times. Feel free to go onto the website and look around and subscribe, because it's one of the few and one of the best pagan newspapers out there that you'll find today. So feel free to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then also, I want to mention, be sure to stop by our website at IAPNRadio.net, where you can stay apprised of what's going on here at Iowa Pagan News. And also, we have our merchandise page up on the website as well. Be sure to check that out. And there's also going to be a lot more coming very soon.
Okay, now back to our discussion. Now, one of the things that's not, I think, is a beauty of the pagan traditions and pagan craft is we don't have to have a physical church or a building to practice. Nature is our church.
Mm-hmm.
The earth is our church. So a lot of times when we do our rituals and our celebrations, we do them outside. Most of us prefer to do our whenever possible to be outside in nature, attached to the earth, and doing our ritual. This is one of the beauty that I found of the pagan spirituality, that that we have. We don't have to recognize, you don't have to be in a building and sit there and be stuffed in a building and have to go to a certain building to worship. The earth is our mother, and the earth is what we worship first. We're agrarian by nature. We're agrarian by traditions. Is there any disagreement with that, or anybody have any comments?
No, you're right on track with that.
Now, magic and celebration are performed in small groups, usually 3 to 13, called covens. This is a common practice, actually. These are basically autonomous. There's no central church or authority in a hierarchy. That's one key aspect of the craft. You do have covens and you have small gatherings or circles from 3 to 13 witches that normally constitute a coven, or more than 13 sometimes. But we don't have a hierarchy. There's no one supreme witch or supreme Wiccan authority that tells us how to practice. Each one is autonomous. Each individual grouping has its own autonomous groups within, or leadership within. In traditionalist Wicca, which is what I follow, there is a minor hierarchy inside of the individual coven, which is run autonomously. You work your way up through a degree system to become an elder or high priest in the degree system. Once you reach the position of priest or high priest, you can then hive off and start your own coven and be of your own and even your own tradition, if you choose to see fit. That's generally one of the common practices in traditionalist Wicca or traditionalist paganism. In other paganism, in solitary, I know it doesn't work that way, but there is no hierarchy even in solitary. Am I not right?
Yep, you're correct on that as well. Because I know we've had that discussion before a few times when it comes to the degree system compared to being following a eclectic path or being a solitary. Um, and yeah, that's something that I definitely agree with you on.
Okay. There is no holy book or prophet, no equivalent of the Bible or Jesus or Muhammad. Individuals have access to the divine and do not require an intermediary. Every initiate is regarded as a priest or priestess. That is so true about craft. We don't have a particular grimoire that says, this is the grand grimoire of witchcraft. And everybody must follow this grand grimoire. We don't have we don't require an intermediary to connect with the gods and goddesses. We are the connection between the god and goddesses within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Welcome back.
Yep. It's like it. Okay, it goes back to another discussion that we also had, or what you were making a reference to, is that there was at one point where I was wanting to create a community center for pagans to gather, and people were mistaking that as church. I'm like, no, that is not what I stated. That it was not going to be a church. It's not a coven. It's just a gathering place. And why people were taking it as church, I have no clue, because that wasn't even in the wording as well. So, nature is basically the church for most all pagans and witches. And plus, not having one set way of doing things. Everybody practices different. Everybody has their own ways of doing things that fits things for them. We don't follow any guidelines of any kind of grimoire, Bible, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have any one particular. No one has to go to an intermediary, a church, a pope, or whatever, a priest to connect with the god and goddess. Like I said. Now, as for calling it a church, I think that Earl. I think your whole situation there would wanting to set up a gathering place and people assuming it was a church comes from the preconceived notion from other religious upbringing and other spirituality upbringing. That you have to have a church or anything that when you gather as a group of individuals practicing the same religion, you've got a church. And where in truth it's not. Like I said, it's that's basically what it boils down to. there is no one way and one religion way to the God and Goddess. I think Reverend Shadow Wolf would agree with that.
I'm sorry, do what? I was reading the notes for today. I am so sorry.
We were talking about the fact is that magic is normally and celebration is performed in small groups, like basically 30 to 13, like a circle or a coven.
Right.
There's no central church or authority or hierarchy.
No.
And then in addition to that, there's no holy book, no prophet, no grand grimoire, no equivalent of the Bible or Jesus or Muhammad.
Each coven might keep a book of shadows that is that coven's book of shadows, which is the list of their different rituals and rites and stuff that coven specifically does and how they do them. But
Right.
again, that is separate to each individual coven. And you're right, we don't have a hierarchy outside of the covens of this is who you answer to, this is the supreme leader, whatever. Each individual coven has their high priest and high priestess, which are basically elders inside the coven. And that's mainly more of a title.
Okay.
What is the purpose of elders and the
Roderick
high
has a very
priest and
interesting.
priestess if there are no intermediaries?
Okay. The purpose of the elders, the high priest, and high priestesses are not as intermediaries, Roderick. They're as teachers, as educators.
Right.
Their job is to educate the new people coming in on what the beliefs are about. Much like what I do here, like what we are doing here in this roundtable. They're providing education based upon each individual belief system. Like, because when you enter a coven, basically you enter as a seeker, someone who's seeking the knowledge or seeking the information.
Mm-hmm.
It is up to the high priest and high priestess of that coven, or elders of that coven, to not only talk to you and find out what you're looking for, but to direct you into the way of the path if that's what truly you're seeking. So it's up to us to be the teachers and educators, and then further you along that path as we grow. It took Reverend Shadow Wolf there how many years? 15?
I started training in the Guardians of the Blue Flame when I was 19. I achieved my 3rd degree when I was 34. You do the math. There is a minimum requirement of a year and a day, depending on the coven that you belong to and stuff. But however, this is something that me and Ed talked about the other day, and Earl talked about, is if you are in a coven that is moving people through their degrees at that minimum year and a day, my recommendation to you would be to find another coven. And I'm not knocking any coven that does that. But in my experience, working through the degree systems and doing the coursework that was required, I learned a lot more. It took me 5 years to go from my initiate to my 1st degree. And that was completing all the coursework. Because of all the coursework I've done working through the different degrees that was assigned to me, I feel like I know more than if I had just been moved up. Oh, year and a day, 1st degree, year and a day, 2nd degree, year and a day, 3rd degree. Is it possible for somebody to attain a ton of knowledge in a year and a day? Absolutely. But when you look at the coursework that's required of you joining a coven like Guardians of the Blue Flame, it's going to take you longer than a year and a day. Just the one of the things for one of the 3rd degrees is for the coursework for the 3rd degree is you have to attend 36 different rituals that are according to the Esbats and the Sabbats. You can't do that in a year and a day.
Mm-mm.
It's gonna take you a couple of years just to meet that specific requirement. do your research, do your due diligence when you're looking at these covens if you're trying to join a coven. Because don't rob yourself of the opportunity to learn when coming into this as a seeker and as an initiate.
Okay, Roderick also, so the beliefs are creedalized, codified, but not written. They are. It is codified and creedalized in a lot of ways, but we don't have a written credo per se.
Unless, of course, you count the Wiccan reads.
Except the Wiccan read and the Wicca.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's where we're going to get to next with this that very question segued right into the next statement. The central ethic is, and harm ye none, do as you will. Whatever energy you send out returns threefold or in three aspects, so it's wise to be kind to others. Generally, it's the golden rule. It occurs in all religions. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Treat others as you expect to be treated. Right? And harm none, do what you will, and harm none includes yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so forth. So yes, we do have a particular creed that we do tend to follow, even as pagans, and this is found in most pagan traditions, not just in Wicca. One of our things is we should live in harmony with the earth and nature and not exploit them. We based our practices off the agrarian practices, off the planting, growing seasons of the year, the whole 9 yards. The wheel of the year is the seasons and the turning of the seasons. So yes, we try to live in harmony within nature. We try to, and we do not believe in exploiting nature, but rather living harmoniously with nature. This is a common thing you'll see in most paganism, actually.
Yep, exactly.
What's that?
Exactly.
Okay. Wicca is about a spiritual path, it's not the only one. There is no recruiting, and people should be free to choose the path that best fits their needs.
Correct.
Claim themselves out of a painful event without utilizing karma. You want to highlight that for me, please?
Oh, yeah.
Money? Under our creed, how do we climb ourselves out of a painful event without utilizing karma? Are you talking about somebody has done you wrong and you want to return? You want to speed along karma? I mean, it's the question was kind of vague. I would need to understand that question. I would need like a scenario, not like an actual scenario you're going through, just a scenario, so I could understand a little bit more.
I think there's a misconstruing of the word karma in the question itself.
Well, here's the thing. Regardless of what you do, there's going to be a karmic penalty that you're going to pay, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah,
There's no getting out of that. There's no, oh, I'm going to do this ritual because of X, Y, and Z, but there's not going to be a penalty for me to pay. You're going to pay that toll. You're going to pay that penalty, regardless of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So there is no getting out of that. I hope that answers your question.
No, karmic balance. Okay, there's good karma and there's bad karma. There's negative and positive karma, because all things in the earth are balanced. Okay, so climbing ourselves out of a painful event without utilizing karma is not actually. I think you're misusing the word karma there, Patsy. Okay, climbing ourselves out of painful events without Basically, how that's done is by self-forgiveness. Pure, plain, and simple. And once you recognize, and that comes from self-awareness. That comes from growing within yourself first. The one thing about this spirituality and pagan spirituality is that there's the first goal of the witch: know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in order to know thyself, you must be able to go deep, dig in really deep, actually, internally. Recognize where you have flaws, accept yourself for who you are, forgive yourself for those flaws, and move forward ahead of them. So if you have something that's hurtful or harmful and painful to you, you must recognize that where the pain's coming from and learn to grieve it, let it go, forgive it, and move on from it. Events occur naturally. The way we handle events and handle things has to be done through self-awareness and self-forgiveness. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, kind of reminds me of the miniseries that I watched. This is back in the 80s, called Shogun. There's a miniseries. And at the very end of it, uh, the his, well, back then we had Orson Welles doing a commentary on, telling the story. But at the end of it, he says that Lord Toranaga says that there's two kinds of karma unfolding here. One, in fact, he was referencing to Anjan, who was the English um captain of his vessel that wound up crash landing on or being washed ashore on the islands of Japan from a bad storm. And he's referencing to pilot Anjan that his karma is to spend the rest of his days in the Japan Islands, and it's my karma to become shogun. But so one argument I can impose to that is the karma is being done dual all the karma is being reflected back on Lord Toranaga for his actions of destroying any means for Anjan to leave the islands and all the atrocities that he committed himself to become shogun.
Okay.
So that's the one. That's the point that I can argue with that one. Talking about karma.
Actually, I experienced an
Okay.
awful event that to me would call a karma event, not from me or magic per se, but from their actions against me. So you don't have to do anything in regards to that at
No,
all. They're
no.
going. So I'm going to use a Christian phrase here. So excuse me for this. You reap what you sow. What you send forth comes back to ye. So ever mind the rule of three from the Wiccan read. It applies.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody does something, I'm trying to figure out how to appropriately phrase this without using strong language. If somebody does something to you so messed up that you feel that you need to lash out in order to get over that, first off, you need to forgive yourself for even looking at that as an option, because all you're going to do at that point is you're just going to make stuff worse for yourself, because now you're sending forth negativity out there towards somebody else and you're going to reap it, whether it's immediately or in the future or over a prolonged period of time. Because yes, karma loves to be really nasty like that and say, okay, now you're going to reap all that negative energy that you put out, and you're going to go over it for a course of 10, 15, 20 years. I know people that are experiencing that right now. That's why I can speak on it. Let karma deal with the people that have done negative to you. Focus on what you need to focus on to get yourself right, and push off the rest of the stuff that other people have done to you. Because at the end of the day, you are what matters, not what they've done. What are you doing to rectify your life and to rectify the situations that you've put yourself into? Are you talking to people? Are you seeking, professional help? Are you forgiving yourself and doing that self-awareness check, just, and diving into yourself to see what part you may have played in that subconsciously or consciously? Because there are times where we allow things to happen to us, and it's not a conscious thought that we allow it to happen. It just happens, and we just go along with it. So sometimes we have to look, did we subconsciously allow this to happen without realizing it? And then forgiving ourselves for allowing that to happen when we finally become consciously aware of it. But karma will deal with that individual or individuals that have done that to you. Trust and believe that. Eventually, karma will come back on them, and karma has this nasty tendency of hitting just when you think everything's going just the way you want it and your life is going great. And then all of a sudden, yeah, remember that really negative thing you did 5-10 years ago? Yeah. Now you're about to reap the consequences of that, buddy.
Okay, Roderick, you asked a good question. How come then justice often feels like it doesn't come in this physical lifetime? Isn't justice in the afterlife the point in most religions, because it appears justice doesn't often occur in this world? Okay, in answer to your question, whose definition of justice is really defined by that? Divine justice, in a nutshell, is entirely different than human justice. Okay? Divine justice may not necessarily be in the means that we expect it to occur. I can give you a classic example of this, and that's from a personal story and a personal experience. My foster sister was murdered. She was shot. This applies also to Patsy's question and comment too. My foster sister was shot in the back 6 times and murdered by her estranged husband. Left a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old child, both motherless and fatherless. My initial and first reaction, like Reverend Michelle Wolf was stating, right, was I wanted to go hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go kill the bastard who killed my sister. What I did instead is I sat down in my chair and I forgave myself the very propensity of being able to commit the self-same act that this person did. He is the one spending his rest of his life in jail. He is the one that did not have the opportunity, like I did in the last 23 years, to watch his children grow up to be a fine young lad and lady that are doing well and succeeding beyond anyone's dreams and expectations because they were raised correctly by me and their grandmother. The gratitude I find in that very thing is I'm not the one in jail. I could have easily been in that same thing. I could have easily punished myself. Where justice fell in that is I am the one who had the freedom and the opportunity to have the love and respect of my niece and nephew and watch them grow. So there's the justice I found. And justice in forgiving myself the very thing that could have been me.
I mean, it also depends on what you define as justice. Because in my mind, as somebody that has been on the other side of life when I was younger, I know what it's like to be locked up. So I know what that person that did that horrible act to your stepsister it has to deal with. And that right there is karma in and of itself. They're going to spend the rest of their life in prison. God knows what's going to happen to them while they're in there. Whether, we all hear the stories about what happens inside the penitentiary system. And if that's what's happening to them, then that's karma. There's the divine justice. There's the karma, the karmic balance coming into play to balance itself back out with this specific individual. Because they did something so atrocious, now they're going to reap exactly what they sowed, regardless of where they are.
Now, one of the things that does lead us to our next statement here. The concept of original sin, sacrifice, redemption, confession, the divinity of Jesus, sinfulness of sex, judgment, heaven and hell, denigration of women, bodily resurrection, and the Bible as divine revelation are not a part of Wicca or paganism. Neither are Satanism, the Black Mass, desecration of cemeteries, the sacrifice of animals, etc. These are not our beliefs, and these are not our practices in Wicca or 98% of all pagan traditions.
Right.
Our practices don't believe in any of that. What we believe is in divine creative force of nature.
Fair,
We believe in the divine creative force of nature. We believe in the universe and karma. We believe in the aspects of everything in this world happens for a reason, with us as co-creators, as in this existence, and we need to maintain our love and respect for the earth and all creations thereof. This is a general synopsis of what we believe. Right. And I don't think I'll have any disagreement on that, will I?
No.
Okay, we're nearing the last 3 minutes of the show, so therefore I'm like to leave it now into your hands, Earl, for our final word to our and of thanks to everybody for being here and so forth.
Yep. Definitely want to thank everyone for tuning in and joining us this evening. Roderick, I didn't have a chance to really get to meet you, sir, but hopefully later on down the road, we'll be able to cross paths and get to know you for you being a author. Congratulate you on your book. Jessica, Patsy, thank you for joining us tonight. And I know that Christy was tuning in for a little bit as well. And also our Boston brother, Sharon, thank you for joining us tonight. And with that, I definitely want to say, be sure to keep everyone around you safe during these times. And be sure to get out if you have the chance to enjoy Mother Nature while she's cooperating right now. And while we have the chance, because you never know what she has planned. So pleasant journeys, everyone. Have a good rest of your weekend. We will see you on the next roundtable next Saturday. We have a lot more coming up here at Iowa Pagan News and also PRC. So stay tuned for further announcements as they come to light. And then, Patsy, your last thing here. I understand that the depth of your definition and the concept we need to consider, and although some of the things that I lost them can't be replaced, I always seek the solace in good karma. Exactly. All right. With that being said, Shadow Wolf, thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely, anytime.
And then, as usual, you can catch us on our next video. Have a pleasant night, everyone, and we are going to be out of here.
Have a good